So there's also dressage braiding. There's a discipline called dressage, and that is horses basically dancing to music in the freestyle. But in order to braid for them, it's a little different than the English braiding. So once again, you would take your mane and you would make sure that it's free of tangles. You would wet it. But the biggest difference is that they take bigger sections of hair. They want a bigger braid. So they would take a lot bigger than we do for the English or the hunter jumper discipline. So they would take almost 3 sections. That's how much bigger they want that braid to be. Now they can also, dressage riders can also braid the other English way, and it's acceptable. But a lot of dressage riders will do this method. So this method is a little different because they want a bigger, thicker braid, and they're not going to have a button to it. So they're going to put, most of the time we're going to use yarn, they use thread, upholstery thread, and a needle. And we're going to try to do it this way so that you can see. So they're going to tie it off with their thread, and we're going to use yarn so that we can see the, they want the thread to be the exact color. So they don't want anything to be seen. And because they're actually sewing the braid, sometimes they get away with leaving it in. So they will take their needle, which is on here, and they're going to put it up through. So what we're going to do is we're going to come from the bottom like we did before and pull it up. And what they're going to do is they're going to pull it almost all the way through. Then they're going to go back down through the braid. Oh, I have to go the other way. I have to go from the bottom. And they're going to pull it back through, maybe. So the needle is definitely easier when you're doing sewing in your braids. Remember, the more your horse moves, the harder it's going to be. I'm going to let him hold that. And then they're going to sew from the sides. We're going to just wrap it. So they would actually be taking their needle and actually sewing that braid. So they would go up and down, and then they would go from the sides and up and down, and that would hold it in there. So it's going to be like a big, huge button like that. So instead of having a long skinny with a knob on it, it would actually be like a huge button. And that's, if his were shorter, it would be a button. His is so long, I can't pull it up enough, but it would be like that. Now because they're using thread, they can generally leave it in one night. So they could probably get 2 days out of one, but they're still going to have to take it out with their seam ripper. Now with being thread and it really blends in, it would be very, very hard. With our green yarn, it's going to be easier to take it out because we can see. And you just keep cutting on that yarn until it comes out. And then you unbraid it like such. Next we're going to show you how to do the Western. It's called banding. And what it does is it bands the top of the mane together so that it lays down really flat. When Western horses show, their manes are shorter than the English. So his mane, if we were doing Western, is too long. It would be about to there. So it would be really short. We're not going to pull it that short but we're going to show you how that it would work. So you would, once again, you're always going to brush or comb, and you're always going to wet, because that way you can get the mane to lay down. I'm going to use a stool this time because my arms got tired. With Western banding, you use little bitty bands, and they can be, usually they're white or they're the color of the mane. This is what I had. I just had clear. So most people will take these, and because there's nowhere to really sit them and they're so small, most people will, ready for this, put them in their mouth to hold, because there's nowhere to hold them. So you take little bitty sections, and you don't braid, but you just put a band around them. So you would put a band and you make it tight. Ooh, these are slippery. The horse ones are not slippery. They have like a rubber in them. Then, because it's sticking out and we don't want it to stick out, you have to pull the bottom and then when we attach it to the next one, hopefully it'll lay down better. So we take a little section, we get another one, and we wrap it around, kind of like a top knot. The tighter the better. And we once again pull from the bottom. And then that way, that one lays better than this one. That one's probably a little thick. The more hair you get, the more it's going to stick up. You get another little section, and you go all the way down your horse's mane like this. It's to make it look neat and tidy. Pull from the bottom. There, that one laid down better. So you would do this all the way down your horse's mane. Sometimes people get fancy and then they come back and they take a little of this one and they take a little of the next one, and they put those two together and they make like a little, I don't know, patchwork kind of thing. I don't even know what you would really call it. Whoa! And when your horse moves, it makes it very difficult. And they would pull this down a little. And then that way, it's all connected. Come here. Okay, so they would do that all the way down. So that's a lot of little bands going along. There you go. Okay, so once again, every night you would come through and take these out so that the horse doesn't rub all the mane out. And you make them tight so they're not exactly easy to get out. So it takes a little while, a little effort. And there we go. So then the next morning they would get up and they would do it all over again. Some disciplines of horses, they have a really long mane. That's part of their showing characteristic, is to have a mane that's long and flowing. And they do what's called a running braid. And a running braid is a braid that starts up here, and his is not long enough, so we're going to have trouble really doing it, but I'll try to get it started for you. It is a braid that starts and then it gets longer as it goes. So you would start the braid, and you can take, it doesn't really have to be a lot of hair, and you would start it like such, and then you take a section and you add to it, and you come across and you take another section and you add to it. You want to keep everything as neat as possible. And of course, in the running braid, the longer the mane, the easier. And you just keep going, and that braid goes all the way down. It ends up being down here with the end hanging down. You can also do that if you're riding, like on the trail ride or doing endurance riding, and you need to keep this mane out of the reins so there's not tangled and getting caught in the mane. You can braid that running mane, or that running braid, sorry, and that keeps it out of the way. So when we did the English mane, when we braided it and we had that little button that we made the little button on the top, lots of times that type of showing requires the tail to be braided also. So that tail would be in a French braid. So you have your yarn, you make sure your tail is free of tangles. You take hair from both sides and you pull it around just like a normal French braid. He doesn't have a lot of hair right here, so it's going to be very difficult to get it started. So every time you pull from the side and you pull it across, and you pull from the side and you pull it across. Now notice his hair is pulling out, so I am pulling too hard. Some horses have hair that's pretty stuck in their tailbone, and some horses have hair that pulls out easy. So I am making the braid too tight. So I know as I go on that I can't make it that tight. So you just keep going down. I used to do all of this when I was a kid, and I did all of this every single day for my own horse, and see, I pulled too hard, it came out, and for a friend of mine. And so I did this. I would get up at 4 in the morning usually, and I would do 2 or 3 horses before I started showing at 8 a.m. So it really is kind of a love. If you're fortunate enough to have money that you can pay someone to do it, then it really does, it is beneficial because it takes time. And early in the morning, it is kind of boring to just stand in a stall and do this for hours. But each tail is also $50 to $70. So if you had a mane and a tail that you were having braided, you're spending about $110 to $150 every single day for someone to do this. So it is very good money. It is something that you can earn a great living at. You just kind of have to stay up at night and then you sleep during the day. So it's a night job because during the day, all of this has to be done before the horses can show, and they usually start showing early in the morning. Want to take a break? All right, so now we're going along. We're pretty close to our tailbone. We have a couple more braids to do, and then we have to tie it up. We have to finish it at one point. So we have to figure out how we actually end the braid. So we're going to say that this is close enough, and we're going to braid it a little farther. So we're not pulling any more hair now, we're just braiding. We're going to add our yarn. Oops, I think I put one up here, I did. We're going to add our yarn like we did with our braids for our mane. We're going to braid it in a little bit, and then we're going to tie it off around and around. Pull. Now, just like we did with the mane, we are going to do the same idea with the tail. We're going to take our latch hook and we're going to hold it up here and run it through. Actually, I may go up a little higher than that. I'm going to go up about here. And so there's our end. And we're going to take the yarn and hook it and try to pull it up through there. I've got it so tight. There we go. Close it in. And I missed it! And we'll try again. This is why it takes lots of practice. I haven't done this for many, many years. And we're gonna pull it through. Like such. So this end we have to pull up into the braid because we don't want it to stick out. Okay, here's our braid that we had. We're gonna come around it like we did before. And we're going to pull it tight. And there, that's how we have the end is tied up. Remember, this would be in a dark color so you wouldn't see all of this part. You can also use thread and you can tie it in. But we just used the yarn, and that is how you would braid a tail for the English competition.